the U.S. Census data from 2020 has started to file out, and we're starting to be able to analyze all of the data and the changes that we've undergone in our communities over the past 10 years. But some of those changes may not be entirely accurate for a number of different reasons. And one person that knows a lot about that and has some strong opinions on those discrepancies is the current mayor and the outgoing mayor of Pleasant Ridge, Kurt Metzger, with us on the MegaCast. Kurt, thanks for being with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate having you on. In addition to your role with the city of Pleasant Ridge, you're also a demographer and a member of Detroit's Census-wide committee. And we've already seen some articles this week where Mayor Mike Duggan has mentioned that he believes the city of Detroit's population count, which according to the census data has significantly dropped. He believes that Detroit was misrepresented in the census data because of the circumstances of the pandemic. And do you have that same thought, having looked at some of the data that's been out so far? Do you believe that Mike Duggan, the mayor of the city of Detroit, is on point with that argument, or is this census data truly, as far as we can get it, accurate?
Well, there's I do believe, I'm starting to look a little bit more detail, and that's what's going to take to really drill down in the city to understand what changes occurred. The fact that Detroit lost 74,000 people was a little bit more than was anticipated. We expected a loss, so that was the first shock. When you look at the data, the only race and ethnic group to drop was the African American community, which actually fell by 93,000. Now, Detroit claims that they've got DTE records that show more occupied housing units than the census counted. We also know that Detroit had a lot of problems with the fact that the census was done online, and a lot of people are not connected in the city of Detroit. We also know that the pandemic basically eliminated all their outreach activities that they had planned up until the very last minute. And then when the Trump administration decided to stop the census 2 weeks early, a lot of the follow-up, the Census Bureau sending enumerators out to knock on doors from which they had not received responses, that was eliminated at those last 2 weeks, which were very critical to get to the hardest to enumerate. So there is that. Those factors play a big role in making us think that there were a number of people missed. The other thing, but as I start looking, as you look outside the city of Detroit, growth in the African American community in Oakland County, in Macomb County, and out Wayne County leads you to believe that a lot of African Americans moved out of the city and moved into the surrounding suburbs. So we have to balance those two, and we'll be looking, hopefully I'll be part of a group that will be looking at more detailed, nuanced data to try to better understand what actually happened.
According to the U.S. Census data from 2020, that between 2010 and 2020's censuses, the African American population in Detroit dropped, but it's showing in this data that there's been some rapid growth of the black population in Wayne County, in places like Harper Woods, in Macomb County, and in places such as East Point, which are in surrounding areas of Detroit, which suggest otherwise. And then you mentioned Mayor Duggan's claim that that DTE has reported significantly more residential units that are being counted for their numbers on a regular basis than was counted in the U.S. Census. That differential is significant. The census claiming 254,000 occupied households, while DTE Energy reports 280,000 residential homes are currently paying electric bills. And part of this issue with these missing people, so to speak, they're not missing. We know that there are people there that always are going to slip through the cracks with the U.S. Census. It's the nature of the nature of the information gathering that some people are going to fall through the cracks, no matter how much effort is put into this. But in the situation in 2020, where you did have that reduction and that delay and that stop and start in those door-to-door interactions, some people do get missed because that is being done on a very local basis. In Wixom, where I live, despite me filling out the census over the phone, I had multiple people come to my door at my apartment looking for, because they had not had my address marked off of their papers yet, but that may not be the case in places like Detroit. So leading up to the end of the deadline, to the deadline of collecting data, was Detroit seeing a struggle to get those people on those front lines to go door to door, especially because of the situation of the pandemic at that point in time?
Yeah, you've done your homework quite well. Yes, I mean, obviously, the census will go, the harder to count areas, those areas that have the most vacancies, those areas that are seen as being a little bit iffy in terms of blight, and people feel a little bit hesitant to go out. That tends to be the neighborhoods where you have the highest non-response rate. But it's also depending on how the Census Bureau did their follow-up, which was delayed starting, and as I said, was ended 2 weeks early by the Trump administration. The assumption is that there were a number of housing units, particularly in those hard to count areas, and Detroit has more than certainly any place in Michigan and more than most of the major cities in the country. We know that they have the highest poverty. We knew that there were a lot of issues in terms of vacancies and problems finding people. That's the assumption is, therefore, the Census Bureau did not go to every place. It's possible, there's still some questions nationally. They're looking at issues around non-response on questions. There's some still discussions as to what happened in terms of pandemic, the various procedures that were planned and then postponed, and some were eliminated. And certainly the work done at the local level, getting the word out, doing the knocking, door knocking. Detroit had a tremendous outreach program planned that was kind of scuttled in most cases, and it became more of a online presence, more of a public relations and advertising. And so those kinds of issues all play into this. I don't know. I mean, in between 2000 and 2010, 185,000 African Americans left the city of Detroit. So we're now down to half of that. It's very possible that a great percentage of that number actually were counted, but they were counted in other communities. So again, we need to look a lot further, and we also have to realize that those DTE counts need to be as of April of 2000, because that's Census Day. And so we need to start looking at, the hookups by neighborhood instead of looking citywide. And so we'll be doing a lot more of that.
We're joined by Kurt Metzger. He is the outgoing mayor of Pleasant Ridge. He's also a demographer and a member of Detroit's Census-wide committee, joining us today on the MegaCast. And as per reports from the U.S. Census, Detroit lost about 10.5% of its population, falling to a population of just 639,111 residents. Mayor Mike Duggan, of course, disputes that, as do many other people in the city and on that census committee. And Mike Duggan even claimed that he believes Detroit was undercounted, quote, by at least 10%, and closed quote. And these have major impacts on the city of Detroit. And just like missing census data or undercounted data can have significant impacts on your state or on other communities as well. Michigan, of course, lost a congressional seat because of its drop in population compared to other states in the union, and so that's going to have a significant impact. But in the city of Detroit, this can also have a significant impact on federal funding for roads, for infrastructure, for other major issues that clearly need to be addressed and could be impacted by this undercounting. So, Kurt, my question for you is, with this data having been what it is, it's been collected, that it is what it is from the 2020 census, but we have this information from DTE and from other resources about how much of an undercount this could be. What can be done at the community level and in the city, in the region, to potentially correct this undercounting or address this undercounting? Can that be petitioned to the U.S. Census Bureau for a change?
Well, it can be. I mean, it's not easy. The Census Bureau does not just automatically, if somebody says we were undercounted and based on these records, we have this many more people. It's not that easy. The Census Bureau requires a great deal of data and a great deal of information to challenge. They only accept certain kinds of information. even at that, very seldom does the Census Bureau make major changes. And those changes will not occur for a period, even if Detroit gets in a very detailed challenge by the end of the year. That has to be studied. People are going to be looking at it. The 2020 numbers, even with a possible adjustment down the road, will still be the final numbers that people will see when they go to all their publications. Even if the numbers are adjusted, all the data that come out based on the 2020 census going forward will all still be predicated on that 639-111, even if there is a change. So yes, there's a challenge procedure and there may be some success in the end, but it's a very long road. It's a very difficult road. And I imagine there will be other communities across the country, not necessarily in Southeast Michigan. Haven't seen or heard complaints. When you look at Oakland County communities, you look at Macomb and Wayne, surprisingly, a lot of communities did quite well, and especially ethnic communities like Hamtramck and Dearborn Heights. The ethnic communities really came out and responded to the census. You see that in increasing numbers in Oakland County, but you see it throughout the region. So it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult. It's going to require a lot of analysis and some really good, strong data to make the case.
We're joined by Kurt Metzger. He is the outgoing mayor of Pleasant Ridge, a demographer as well as a member of Detroit Census-wide committee. And I'm just looking at the census website at census.gov and some of their specific program procedures for example, their count question resolution program and their requirements for appeals to census data. And there are tons of hoops to jump through. There's a lot of detail that goes into that, and especially where you have a situation where a major city, like the city of Detroit, won't be alone in believing it's undercounted, especially in given the year that we held this current census in 2020. And because of the challenges that were there. So Kurt, just a few more minutes with you. And I have said multiple times as I've reset and reintroduced you to those that may be tuning in process that you're the outgoing mayor of Pleasant Ridge. Why outgoing at this point?
Yeah, you keep making that point. I have been mayor now for 8 years. It's been a wonderful 8 years, but I'm getting up in age, and I just thought, after 8 years, I think you got to know when to, as Kenny Rogers said, you got to know when to fold them. And I've really enjoyed myself. I don't want to start having it become routine or lose that edge. And I think I have a commissioner who's been with me for the 8 years and I feel very strongly about. He's very interested in taking over the job. And so I thought, knowing full well that the mayor position would be well filled, I decided it was time to step down and put my support behind Brett Scott. So it's been great. We've accomplished a lot in terms of Pleasant Ridge. We even gained population between 2010 2020. So I feel total success, and I feel that I can step down knowing that the city is in good hands and will continue to be kind of a popular place for young families and others to live.
Well, as we prepare for you to leave your position as mayor of Pleasant Ridge, we want to look back at an issue that has continued to be an issue throughout our local area and really has inflated over the past couple of months, and that's the issue with these power outages and these severe storms. A couple of years ago, you were quoted in a Free Press article about DTE outages saying, at least in terms of Pleasant Ridge residents, quote, "Most of our residents didn't think trees were the issue for years and years. We have had not a love-hate relationship with DTE. It was just a hate relationship," and then chuckled. In terms of what can be done, what has been done since 2019 in these 2 years plus since that point in the issue, has DTE made any progress in Pleasant Ridge in your local area in terms of curbing some of these power outages? Has the issue stayed the same? And then on top of that, what can be done from a resident level, from a local government level, to address that issue, as we've seen more and more severe weather this summer than we have in the past.
Right, and we'll continue to, no doubt.
Yeah.
And DTE has admitted that they are behind in two areas: tree trimming and infrastructure improvements. And DTE did come out. We did actually have an open house where DTE brought all their staff and had tables and maps and everything else. So they've been very accommodating in terms of coming and meeting with Pleasant Ridge residents. Obviously, there was, I think people kind of forget, and then this summer has just been really difficult. We've had a lot of tree trimming in Pleasant Ridge. We celebrate our tree canopy, but we have so many large trees. We actually had one fall down in our huge limb fall in our backyard and crush our screenhouse. And luckily it didn't hit the power, but it did hit internet. So we just got our internet back. But half the city was out again. On the east side of Pleasant Ridge where we live, the southern part of that was luckily part of an infrastructure improvement in Ferndale, which kept our lights on this time around. But the area just north of us, which is on a Royal Oak grid, transformers went out, and they were out until last night. The west side, there have been a couple areas of the west side that have been out 4 and 5 times this summer. So if you look at our Pleasant Ridge Facebook pages, our resident Facebook pages, there isn't a lot of love for DTE still. And certainly there's a lot of talk about going to the Public Service Commission following Dana Nestle's suggestions, and really there's a lot of continued upset. Again, it's trees. I mean, we love our trees, but until they fall and knock a line down. But I think much of what we've seen are at least where problems lie, it seems to be infrastructure as well. And DTE is going to have to get a lot of that repaired. I know it's a huge job, but yeah, Pleasant Ridge isn't, if you go out to not talk to most Pleasant Ridge residents, they will not be singing the praises of DTE, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, that's unfortunately what I think is going to be the case and continue to be the case in many places locally here in southeastern Michigan with these power outages as we continue to see more severe weather over time. Kurt, we appreciate having you on the show today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.